right now on Renderlife.
This is Renderlife, where we discover, celebrate, and elevate for a better life. I am Neil Render, and today joining me, we have Candi Carruthers. And Candi's gonna share her powerful story of the chaotic life that she has lived and how to rise above all of that. So Candi, thank you for just joining on the show. And we're just so glad to have you. You look wonderful and great.
Thank you.
So Candi, there's where do I start with all the situations you had been through in life? Well, let's bring it back to the beginning.
When I was about 5 years old, my mother decided that I should go live with her brother and his wife. So I lived with them from the time I was 5 until I was 15. At that point, I ran away from home. There was a lot of abuse, both physically and emotionally. And at that point, I felt like it was turning sexual. Instead of waiting until I was 18, I actually left home when I was 15.
So by the time 15, when you said it was turning sexual, what do you mean by that?
There was just clues there, getting dressed in my room, and I would notice that he would be looking through the door, just other innuendos that he would make, and I just felt like I was in a really unsafe position to be in.
Did you feel like it would be a predator, like a predator prey?
Just trying to see how far he could go.
How did that make you feel?
Sadly, I wasn't really surprised by the behavior because he was an abusive person. So to me, it just had been, I could endure a lot of things, but I'm not going to allow myself to be abused sexually by this person. So I had to leave.
So was it like when you said there was a building up, when did it hit you just to run away?
There was actually an incident where I wasn't feeling well and I didn't want to go to school. So he started feeling on my stomach, and then it got to the point where it was almost a point where it was inappropriately touching me. And it was at that point where all the other things that were going on, I felt like, okay, we're getting close to this person actually doing something to me. So it's time for me to go.
Does it kind of sometimes relive on the inside of you, even these days today?
I think so, not anymore, because it's something that I've dealt with. Because I'm mid-40s, I've done a lot of different things to cope with it that were wrong. So I really feel like I'm at a point in my life where I can see this is what happened to me. I've already forgiven him for that and other people that have hurt me in my life. So there's no point to actually relive that. The only purpose in retelling my story would be to help someone else.
Right, so there were things with counseling and advice that you went through at classes and courses, just to process with people.
Yes.
So did you have like a healthy community of people that really processed with you?
It wasn't until I was older. I tried so many times to go back to school, and when I finally did get back into school, going to college, there were mentors there that were very helpful. But as far as like the spiritual aspect and my mental health, it wasn't until I actually went back to church and found mentors there to deal with the root cause of my behavior. As
you moved a little bit past that around the 20s, what happened with that around 20, 21 years of age?
Well, when I was 15, I lived with my best friend and her mother for 2 years until I was 17, and my biological mother felt she wanted to cultivate a relationship, and I thought I should come back home. And at that point, my friend's mother's like, I really don't have a choice. She's your mother, you're 17, you have to go live with her. And that's what happened. And so I lived with my mother. At that point, I dropped out of school, I got pregnant. By the time I was 21, I was a single mother of 2 children.
So what did that do to impact your world, that single mother, being intimate?
I think I was really naive. I thought that I would be with this person forever. We were going to get married, but so many things transpired where he was unfaithful, he was with a family member, and all of these things. He didn't want to work. I mean, I worked until my due date with both of my children and went back to work when they were 3 weeks old. And it got to the point where it's like, well, if I have to do everything alone, I may as well be alone. At least I won't be ticked off about you being here and not doing anything.
So when that relationship ended, what happened next?
Well, through my 20s, I think around after my third sexual partner, I had been hurt so badly that I was just like, I'm going to treat you the way you treat me. And so then I started to spiral down, and it turned into a sexual addiction with multiple partners, and that's how I coped with feeling unwanted, feeling unloved. I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me. And that was basically how it went for quite a few years. And then somewhere in that mix is when I met my now ex-husband in my 20s, and by him moving to different places, we would reconnect later on and then not see each other for a couple of years and then reconnect, and finally we reconnected and I became pregnant, and then a year later we got married.
Was it built on healthiness, or it was already broken from the beginning and then moving forward?
It was built on dysfunction, I would say. Now that I'm older, I realize we attract who we are, and I realized I attracted a sex addict because I was a sex addict.
Wow.
And so, therefore, when we were together, it was great.
It was
you
great.
know?
The energy, boom.
But when it was bad, it was bad. So at that point, I tried and failed 3 times to go back to college, but at that point, before he came back into my life, I actually stuck with it. So I was on the verge of completing my bachelor's degree when I gave birth to my son. I had 1 more semester left.
What all were you dealing with in addition with just school? You know, were you in a place of any sort of stability at all, mentally or emotionally, or it was just everything was just torn to smithereens emotionally? You was just flying by the seat of your pants.
We get used to our dysfunction, so I felt like I was stable.
Oh,
I know there was a lot of growth there,
Yeah.
and like even prior to him coming back into my life, I was actually a manager of an adult bookstore, and I had seen so much, dysfunction there. That,
Erotic books about sex and toys,
video stories, everything like that.
videos.
So I had come to a point where I was celibate for over a year. So I'm a manager of an adult bookstore, and I'm celibate because people started to confide with me, like the customers telling me about their addictions and how they use sex and things of that nature. And then it wasn't fun anymore. It was like, this is really destroying people. And I'm letting it destroy my life.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, Candi's going to continue to share how she came out with the total victory. And we're back. So Candi, how did you exit the relationship?
Well, we were together almost 10 years. We had 2 children who are now about to be 12 and 6 years old. But throughout that relationship, I obtained my master's degree, but I always felt like I had to dumb myself down. I couldn't be proud of myself. I couldn't be proud of my accomplishments. I weighed 310 pounds. And there was always someone else in his life, whether it just be online or, on dating websites, hookup sites or whatever. There was always someone else. And it wasn't until I actually saw it for myself, I caught him somewhere with someone, that, it was like, this is real. Yeah. This is your life and this is happening, and you can choose to be a part of this, or you can choose better for yourself.
So the master's was a motivation, but then the hit to see that he was there with this woman was a tremendous setback?
I think is what I needed to see in order to actually get out. And I didn't get out right away. Like because at this point I accepted Christ into my life, and I'm a Christian, so I believe I should try to work out the marriage as well as I could. I waited a year. Nothing changed. The behavior hasn't changed.
Nothing.
We can only change ourselves. And that's something that took me a long time to learn. We cannot change other people. So if that other person's not willing to work on themselves as you're working on yourself, then there's really nothing you can do. So after a year, I filed for divorce. The divorce took a year and a half because he was uncooperative. And we're still going to court now for custody and child support. So that's like something that has been ongoing, but I finally did get a divorce after 2.5 years.
Right. So you said you were in the 300s range of weight, but you was dealing with self-improvement. Right. So there was leading up to marathon running and exercises, right? Training.
Yes, training.
Yeah, let's go more in depth about that. So yeah, marathon runner.
So I started taking care of myself, started exercising. I'm still very slow. When I first started, I was at like a 22-minute mile. I couldn't walk very far. I'm at about a 15-minute per mile. I do walk run intervals, and that's what really helps me get through the race. So
Who initiated that thought to run marathons? You should run a marathon.
well, there was a group at church they started.
Okay.
My friends, they started doing Spartan races, obstacle course racing. And, I said, I really want to do that. And this is at 300 pounds. And they're like, we believe that you can. And so that's really what it took. It's other people believing in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. And I think for me, at least, I can believe a lot for other people, but it's hard for me to believe it for myself. So it's basically started working out with them at church in a small group, and we did a small mud race, and then we went on, and so they have different distances that you can do, and there's 5 miles, 8 miles, up to 14 miles, and I did mine backwards. So we did the longest race first. Which
Oh wow! So you did the longest
yes,
first.
It took me almost 9 hours. And then we did the middle one and then the last one on the same weekend.
So Candi, you did smaller races, you did obstacle courses, and tell me about just the marathon process, the registration, what the experience of it.
Well, my friend was registering for a marathon, which she's done several, and I was going to register for the half marathon. That was my next goal. And I thought to myself, hey, maybe I can attempt to do the marathon. And this was in February, and the marathon was in September. And at this point, my weight loss is totally stalled. There's some other medical issues going on there. But my friend says, I believe that you can do this. And so I registered for the marathon. We started actually just walking in February, which we live in Chicago, so it's not the easiest thing to do. And so I really didn't give myself much time, considering my weaknesses and my strength when it comes to running and things of that nature. But it's something that I wanted to do, so we went through the training for that.
So within the training, I mean, some days, how long were certain days? I mean, that's pretty grueling. That's pretty tough. It takes a disciplined individual. What was that grit like?
It's about 5 days a week, but the issue is, again, how slow that I am. So what may take someone an hour to do may take me 2.5 hours to do. So there were some days that we were out there for 6 hours straight.
Right. So that was the training. So on marathon day.
Marathon day was very hot. It was in September in Ohio. It was about, I think, 84, 85 degrees. I actually got to almost 16 miles, and then the paramedics took me off the course.
So you completed 16 miles. You got around 16 miles. So that was achievement. I even applaud that in itself, that you was able to get to the 16-mile marker. So I'm gonna just paint the picture here in my mind. What I can see is you're like, you're going, and there's an ambulance truck behind
the very last person.
The very last.
So when you're last, you have a whole entourage of people, and one of them is the paramedics. And they had stopped prior to that and checked my blood pressure, and they're like, we noticed that you're not sweating that much, you need electrolytes, and just the way that I was running as well. And then we went a bit further, a couple miles further, and they stopped again, and they said, you do not look well. It's very hot out here, and you're not sweating.
So who was along the sidelines rooting you on? I know there was some people cheering you. Come on, let's talk about that one.
Well, it was really nice because you go through the neighborhoods and they're all cheering for you. And then when you make a loop around, you see the other people and they know you're last.
Yes.
So they're very encouraging to the point where you can get very emotional. And since I have asthma, that's not a good thing because you can bring on an asthma attack when you're running and you get emotional and you feel like your tears are welling up in your eyes. So I had to contain my emotions.
So, Candi, as a marathon runner, and you've completed more experience than I had within running marathons, what would you advise and motivate others with regarding this endeavor, this feat?
Just sign up for it. Don't be naive about the work that's entailed in attempting to do it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with trying and failing because I plan to do it again. I also completed my first sprint triathlon, and when I had signed up for that, I didn't know how to swim.
So you said sprint triathlon?
Correct.
Okay, so you completed that.
Correct.
that's a strong motivational point. I mean, to let people know, because not just any Joe Blow can just jump in a marathon and just do it. You know, it takes. I see even in you a strong mental fortitude. Just, you know, even help you in your healing process. And while you was running, I mean, how did that feel just in that process of healing emotionally and psychologically?
There's things that happen when you do things that you never thought you could physically do. Like 9 hours on a Spartan race course, you go through a lot of emotions, and you really find out what you're made of. I can't imagine doing it again. It's taking that long, and you know, and even other people, I can't imagine doing something for almost 9 hours. But there's people who do, you know, Ironman races for 16 hours, 17 hours. You know, there people can do. Your body can do amazing things, but in that, you also think to yourself, well, if I can do this physically, what made me get to this point where it's all in what you believe in your mind. It's not, it really has nothing to do with your body. Yes, you have to go through the training, but if you don't believe it that in your head, it's not gonna happen.
Wow, that's great. Beverly Candi, thank you
Thank
for
you.
just sharing that powerful story, coming out of chaos and going through chaos and how to rise above all of that. Thank you for joining us on Render Life. And we hope to see you in the future, expecting great things with more marathon finishings and triathlons.
Thank you.
Yeah.